All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Let's talk some football with Alexis Perry from Broncos TV and Broncos Beat. Alexis, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about Von Miller, who made an appearance in PFF's top 50. I mean, we'd sort of expect so. He's the Broncos' best player, still the best player.
He better be.
That's right. Now, he comes in at number 25. It's not meant necessarily as a slight. If you take a look at the other pass rushers around that area, he's still one of the top guys. But it does make you wonder a little bit, where are the rest of the Broncos in the top 50? Alexis, is this just a kind of an indication of how unproven and young this roster is right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I do think it is a big indication on just how young, how unproven. I was a little shocked, though. I do have to say, I was shocked that Courtland Sutton did not make that list anywhere. I mean, I was shocked when he wasn't named to the Pro Bowl outright as well, but to not see him on that list, given that what he was able to accomplish, I think even last year, given the circumstances, I know the Broncos didn't make the playoffs, 7-9 record, but he racked up over 1,100 yards with 3 different quarterbacks. I think that speaks volumes to not only what Courtland Sutton did, but what he's really capable of. So I'm surprised that he wasn't on that list, but I do think, like you mentioned, it just speaks volumes to how unproven this team is. I don't feel like people are really paying as much attention to the Broncos right now, given that they haven't been as good as they have been in the past over the past few years. So I think in time, we're going to see a lot more guys on that list. Courtland Sutton being one of them, maybe Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy. Who knows? Maybe we'll have 5 guys on that list next year.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, Ben, is clearly for me, I would make an easy argument for Courtland Sutton. But even on the defensive side, I mean, Jarrell Casey is 5-time Pro Bowler. Kareem Jackson was unbelievable last year. What do you make of seeing something like that? Is this something that Broncos country should maybe take a little bit of offense to?
Well, I was going to make the argument that if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to watch it on national television, did it really fall? But neither one of you guys even mentioned Justin Simmons, who was a second-team All-Pro.
I was going to.
How did the local coverage forget that Justin Simmons was an All-Pro and didn't make the top 50? So, I think that I think that is part of it, though. I think the lack of exposure for some of these players, Justin Simmons and Courtland Sutton, being so young and not getting that national exposure week in and week out has been a problem for them maybe making some of these teams. There's not this perception that these guys are as dominant because they played on teams that had poorer records. But, when you look at the context of the situation and Justin Simmons being who he is, Courtland doing what he did with the ghost of Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen before finally getting Drew Lock to be his quarterback, I think both these guys have a case. I think Justin should have made it this year, and I think Courtland certainly has a case going forward.
I'm with you on that. Let's talk a little about some news in the NFL as coaches were allowed back into facilities today, with the exception, of course, of the 49ers. So, Alexis, let's talk a little bit about what it would mean if maybe players later this month. I mean, again, we're taking all safety precautions, but if somehow players are allowed back into the facility, is there a value, in your opinion, to getting even a 3-day mini camp in, or do you think, like many teams are expected to do, they're just going to wait till training camp?
Well, I definitely see value in getting guys together for the install period. I mean, that's something that because of virtual OTAs, these players haven't been able to get on the field and actually implement, install, Pat Shurmur's new system, of course, Ed Donatel and Vic Fangio's defensive scheme. So it's nice to get on the field and be able to work together and kind of see how these things come together when you're actually implementing them. And other than that, if they're not going to actually get on the field, I don't see any reason why they should risk it getting together. And let's be honest, these guys are kind of already working together. Some of them, on field, just elsewhere. So I think, and other than team bonding, really just getting into the facility, being together, I think there is value in that. But I think that these guys are kind of already doing that in their own way. And if they haven't actually gotten together physically, they're bonding virtually as well. So I don't really see it unless they're actually going to get on the field, start implementing these new systems. I don't think there's a reason why they should get together.
The other news, of course, coming out this week is teams are not going to be allowed to travel for training camp to off-site campuses. They're also not going to be allowed to have joint practices. Benjamin, is there a way that teams can supplement the joint practices? Because a lot of teams seem to say they like the joint practices.
Well, yeah, they do. And coaches love them and players love it too because it shakes you out of monotony. When you go up against the same guy week in and week out, by the time you hit week 3, you know what the other guy is going to do. And instead of playing sound technique and playing something the way you're supposed to, you start to play that player. And you get a habit of playing that player because you know their routines, you know their nuances. And so having these, inter-team squad scrimmages, whatever you want to call them, I think is very beneficial. Shakes them out of monotony. It gets you back to playing technique instead of just playing the guy you're opposite from. And, I think it helps to reinforce good habits. So that's going to be sorely missed. I don't know how you supplement that. I really don't. I think that's going to be something that coaches and teams are going to have to try to work around this year.
Do you guys think that because joint practices are going away, that maybe that means we're going to see starters getting more snaps during actual preseason games because they're not going to have any real live scrimmage against another team other than in preseason?
Maybe a few, and you might see some gentlemen's agreements between teams to maybe go, 75%. During some of those games early on, so that guys can get more reps and not risk injury. You may see some kind of the preseason temp down into those type of squad scrimmage type deals. I don't know. Coaches could come to some kind of agreement, but I think that's a good idea. I think that ultimately getting more reps is always going to be better.
I think for me, I don't know how you're going to be able to simulate the 10 tight ends that the Broncos were going to face with the Chicago Bears. I just don't simply know how you're going to be able to get away from that. So, no, I don't think there's a real way. But, yeah, I like your point there about preseason game, maybe utilizing that opportunity, especially knowing that you may not get to play all 4 preseason games. There's
right.
Definitely a possibility where that's also limited. And so if you kind of factor in all of that to get tuned up for the season, you're going to have to approach training camp overall in a completely different way.
And let's not forget, training camp's going to be a little bit different this year anyways, given the new CBA and the new rules around that. I mean, there's now like a 5-day acclimation period. Like, what does that mean? Are they allowed to be on the field? Are they allowed to start implementing and installing what they should have been doing during OTAs? Like, I don't really know, but I think it's going to be really interesting no matter what.